Welcome to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. I'm your host, Fabian motherfucking Ojeda, and I don't know shit, but that's okay. All right. Let's get this shit started. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. Hope you all enjoyed our previous episode, the return of the infamous shit show in its 12th iteration. It's always a lot of fun with that. Those guys will be back. You know they'll be back. But I wanted to take a moment now to introduce our next episode. But with this one, I just want to make sure that I share that it's a little bit choppy, and I did my best to edit it so it's listenable. But our guest was on the road, and he did have a little bit of trouble connecting, but here it is anyway, and in its entirety as best possible. I want to welcome to the podcast for the very first time the progressive liberal Daniel Richards. So I know you're joining us on the road, so I definitely appreciate that. What do you got going on? Where are you wrestling tonight?
I'm wrestling in a town called Loyal, Kentucky, which is on the east side of Kentucky.
Okay, and then so is that where you're originally from? Are you in Kentucky?
No, sir. No, I'm driving from my home in Richmond, Virginia, so it's about a 6-hour trip.
Oof. All right. Now, we'll talk a little bit about, what it's like to be, an indie wrestler. But I wanted to jump in because something, really caught my interest. And every time as I'm scrolling through social media, I'll look at things and I'll be like, wow, that's interesting. I bet people will want to hear about that. And, I saw a little clip of, I think it was on the CNN Instagram, and it was of you and you're out there, and as people know, we're pro wrestling fans, you have your baby face and your heel, and you really seem to have adopted this heel persona out there in the South, and I'll let you tell it, right? So what's your character all about as far as wrestling goes?
A lot of people in the South, they have just I don't want to say a fear, but like an aversion to outsiders. So people outside their area that don't sound like them, talk like them. There seems to be a big, a fear, if you will, of like being made fun of, getting stereotyped, and yet, the interesting thing is they do a lot of stereotyping of, quote unquote outsiders. So they tend to hate liberals over there. So I just play upon all those fears. I just use a shred of politics. A lot of it's criticizing their way of life and coming in with what they perceive as a smug arrogance that, my ways are better than their ways, and I definitely play upon the fears of their guns getting taken away, and eliminating coal, because we're out in coal country here in a lot of the towns that I wrestle.
Yeah, and I found that super interesting because I haven't really seen that type of character before. And in pro wrestling, a lot of the time, things that are current affairs, that are topical, right? Pro wrestlers will use that and try to get either support or hate from the crowd, right? And you've seen it in the 80s with like Hulk Hogan and the Iron Sheik, or when Sergeant Slaughter turned heel, and he was an Iraqi sympathizer and things like that. But even recently, you've seen it with where wrestlers have, started wearing all the Trump gear and whatnot, and fans hated it, right? And so you're doing the opposite. You're out there, and like you mentioned, you're playing off of those fears and everything that some people that are, I don't even think it's stereotyping at this point, just statistically, that they're that Trump base, right? They're the ones that are supporting all this crazy wacky shit, and you're out there and you're playing off of the whole, we're in this country, we have the whole, that big huge division between red and blue, and you're out there being super blue, right?
Yeah. So in 2017, when I was first got the wave of media coverage that I received, the tone was different from the fans. People, and CNN touched on this before, people love to hate me more or less, but now it's really taken on a different turn. I mean, the spirit of the insurrection lives through these fans. Now I'm having rocks thrown at me. I've had knives pulled on me. I had a lady try to light my trunks on fire when they were on me. So it's different now.
These people are nuts. Oh man, I can't believe that. I'm watching every now and then, on Vice, they have that, like, the Tales from the Territory. And, back then, when during the Territory days, obviously, people maybe thought it was real, and they thought, pro wrestling, everything was legitimate and real. And as far as the storylines go, and you would see fans that would, like you said, throw stuff at the wrestlers, follow them, try to kill them and stuff like that. But I thought in this day and age, people were a little more smartened up, and, they'd kind of just be like, oh, it's all part of the show. But you have people actually try to hurt you. That's crazy.
Yeah, I definitely have to keep my head on a swivel when I'm in the ring or out of the ring. I think the thing is if you create a real emotion, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We watch movies or watch television shows, and we can be emotionally compelled to feel. And I have that same power. And an advantage I have is, the politicians that are demonized by, anyone with the magic R in front of their name. They can't reach out and touch those people. But I'm there in person in front of them and within arm's reach. So they can take that anger that's gotten driven into them and take that out on me. And it's funny because they follow a party that talks about picking yourself up by the bootstraps. But they always blame all their problems on the liberals when the liberals are in office, when Democrats are in office. So it's a really unique bit of hypocrisy they have going on over here.
Yeah, so actually that kind of answers my question. I was about to ask, if we can pull the curtain back a little, obviously, your character is what it is, but I was going to ask, are you actually a liberal, or is that kind of more like, or are you just kind of playing up a character? But it sounds like you maybe lean a little bit more left than right.
I mean, I vote for the good guys in blue. I mean, that's why I get the reaction I get. I think if I was, had a conservative viewpoint, whatever that is nowadays, and was trying to play a character, people can see through that. But since I'm authentic and real and mean that, it can strike a nerve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Now, what, I noticed a few things on your social media, but what are a few tactics you use to really get under these people's skin? I'll mention one. When you come out to the ring, I noticed you have some pretty interesting T-shirts.
Yeah, I mean, when you perform in front of an audience, whether you've been to that town or not, you always want to pretend no one's seen you before and establish who you are to those people. Because even if you've been to that town, there might be people who are just seeing pro wrestling for the first time or just seeing you for the first time. So wearing a Joe Biden collage shirt, it was a Hillary collage shirt before 5 years ago. I mean, that that does it. I mean, that definitely helps establish who I am. But again, it's like I said before, I'm using a little bit of politics, but really being an affront to their way of life. I remember one thing I said that got a lot of heat is there was a town I wrestled in somewhere else in Kentucky where they had just reopened a mine. And so I meant a coal mine. And then, so I mentioned that, and then people started cheering. And I said, hey, there's no glory in following in the footsteps of your ignorant fathers and grandfathers. And things like that will touch a nerve. Again, anything on, I don't think after I win this match, I'm not going to ask you for your guns. I believe you're going to turn them over for me. Again, that strikes a nerve because this stupid country, we cling to guns. I don't apologize for being really extreme on that. If I had my way, we'd melt every single gun in the fucking world down and be done with it.
Yeah. There's something, I talk about with my friends on the podcast. We do our little, right before this episode, we call it the shit show. It's just a bunch of us, shooting the shit. And I have the same opinion. I don't think, there's any need for them. I don't care. People want to be like, oh, it's our right. It's our right. It's like there's a lot of things out there that you have a right to do, right? But then you got to think of the greater good and what's better for people, but there's no rationalizing sometimes with some of these people that are so diehard, because you'll have people that are out there supporting somebody like Herschel Walker. I mean, I thought Trump was bad, but you got people out here supporting Herschel Walker who it's just he's a complete circus, and I don't get that one. What do you think about that? Have you been following this whole Georgia thing?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, and I will say someone recently mocked Herschel Walker for saying that this race was for the Senate majority. I know Democrats by the numbers already have it, but you have to remember we have a senator from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, and we have Kristen Sinema from Arizona who are Democrats, but are on this power trip because, they in the case of Manchin, he represents a very red state. So, I mean, he, in all fairness to him, he represents his people, but he's I guess there's rhinos for Republicans. Maybe he's a dino for Democrats, Democrat name only, and same with Sinema in Arizona. So really, the Democrats do need 52 to actually just have a tie, and then to be able to have the tie break vote. So we don't empower those two senators who, because things are not partisan now. They're and that people are going to typically vote on party lines for major issues. Unfortunately, Democrats have lost the House, so we'll just continue in a ever-loving shit show where nothing gets accomplished because we'll have the right-wingers in the House making sure nothing gets through to the Senate whatsoever.
Yeah, and so that's where you get this whole like, I don't care who's running, if they represent my side, I'm voting for them. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't like that in today's politics. I wish parties were a thing of the past and we could just completely get rid of that. I wish people would just vote on this is what I agree with, this is what I don't. Not necessarily just kind of like it's like picking a football team on Sunday morning. It's like, I'm diehard this, I'm diehard that, but that's politics.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. But I mean, our way of government, it's not like our system's unique to the world in this respect. You have, as long as you have money in politics and a lot of money is required to run to office. Instead of having publicly funded elections, we, you know, we have companies that donate. We have lobbyists that swayed politicians. And as long as the people who are the benefactors of that lobbyist money, they're the people who would control whether or not that's part of the political process, we're screwed. But if you took money out of politics and again only had publicly funded elections, we would have a lot better quality candidates and a lot better quality leadership. But a lot of quality people are influenced not to run for office because they don't want to do all the fundraising, and I can't blame them for that. So instead, we have people who have no problem asking for money so they can have a job that will enable them to get a hold of lobbyist money. So as long as that's part of the process, it's always going to be flawed.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Dirty world there. I want to talk about a different world, you know, and I'm obviously we're still talking about wrestling. I want to talk about, you know, the indie wrestling world. And I'm pretty intrigued by that because, you know, I've been a wrestling fan all my life. You know, as a kid, if I saw anything that had, you know, three ropes and a couple of guys out there beating each other up, I wanted to watch it. And right now, you know, obviously you have, you know, the big ones. You got WWE and AEW. Maybe sprinkle a little bit of Impact in there. I don't know. But, you know, indie wrestling, I think, is pretty big right now, too, because it's I think fandom is at an all-time high. Well, no, let me take that back. It's not 1990s Attitude Era, but it's still pretty popular now. How did you get into pro wrestling?
Well, I mean, I was like a lot of kids who said they wanted to be a pro wrestler. The way I look at it, I was just the kid that didn't let go of that dream or idea, and I followed through with it. I said once I graduated college, I would train and I would wrestle, and that's what I did.
Now with that, did you go to any sort of wrestling school or anything like that?
So where I would train there was a weekly, so I was living in Southern West Virginia at the time, because I graduated college. So I just moved not too far from where I graduated. And in the town of Oak Hill, West Virginia, they had a weekly show. So I would get there, set up the ring. It'd be 3 hours before the show. And then I would train for a couple hours before the show, and then would be a timekeeper or ring the bell or announce or whatever until I got to a point where someone deemed me ready to wrestle, to have matches in front of people. And that's where you, of course, get your education as much as anything, and especially in the car on the way to towns and the way back from the towns.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like it's really a lot about, you know, putting in that work, right? And getting in there and kind of earning your wings. I wanted to, you know, ask, because you hear that a lot of the times, you know, the indie wrestlers really struggle financially, a lot of these people, right? So if you don't have like another career, another job, you know, you're really struggling. You know, talk about like showing up for a show and getting that hot dog and a handshake and that's it, right? Is that kind of how it is in indie wrestling? And maybe, you know, at least in your experience in your area?
Well, I mean, if you choose to work for a hot dog and a handshake, I mean, there's plenty of people be happy to offer just that to you. I think if somebody's wanting to make it, you know, quote unquote, it's again about putting in the time. Yeah, there's going to be a starving artist thing about it for most people. Everyone's journey is different. Guys have other ways to make money than just the bookings. They can sell merchandise. They that's, and not just at the shows, but outside of that. I mean, there's wrestlers I know who, for their promotions, they offer streaming services, and they can make money that way. You can put your shows on networks like Fight TV. I mean, there are more ways to do it now, and make money or survive. It doesn't mean there aren't other guys with regular jobs in addition to that.
So it's a number of things, it seems like, right? So you have to really hustle and figure out what's best for you. But it is possible to then be successful financially as an indie wrestler, is what I'm hearing. As far as yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that. Well, what's financially successful is a subjective thing, but I just think this business is like anything else. Like, if you want to be the best real estate agent or be a top musician, you have to put time into your craft, rub shoulders, or communicate with people that are at or have been at the top of whatever business you're trying to be great at. Mm-hmm. I think that's anything, is putting in the work, putting one foot in front of the other, and not just going on with your thoughts and feelings, and putting action in, even if you don't feel like it, and treating it like a full-time job, even if you're not making a living at it presently. We all look at the success people have, but we don't always. There's not always a lot of focus on what it took someone to get to that level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. I did, I used to love playing music and stuff like that, and it is really tough to even just, get out there and try to get your name out. I mean, when I was trying, it was right at the infancy of social media, but I can imagine now, you can reach more people, and it's maybe there may be more tools now. And so maybe that's for, any sort of like gig worker like that. I did want to ask, what's been so far, maybe your best experience or greatest experience as far as wrestling goes, or maybe your favorite match or something like that.
Man, well, I mean, the great thing about this business is, like, I've gotten to work and wrestle against guys that, I grew up watching. Favorite match, man, I wrestled Hurricane Helms a few years ago in front of a really ruckus crowd, and it was right at my peak time as far as when I was getting all the news coverage back in 2017. So that one stands out. I've had a lot of matches I've really enjoyed, but that was a great night. Not just in the ring, but outside of the ring with the money I made on t-shirt sales and things like that. Mm-hmm. So just the night that Vice News covered me, that was we had a lot of different media there that day. That was when everything first really started to take off. From the Deadspin was there, Vice was there. We had I'm trying to remember who else. Local, some local news affiliates. BBC was there. So, that was a memorable night. But, I've just been so fortunate in this business. And I haven't, wrestled on national television in the way that I still dream to do. But at the same time, like, I've gotten to have a small national platform for a period of time. And that's been amazing.
Yeah, for sure. I can only imagine that's probably really helped you get some bookings, right? People seeing you like on CNN or Vice or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. It enabled me to wrestle in towns where maybe I wouldn't have been on their I wouldn't have been on their radar otherwise, for sure.
Mm-hmm. You ever make your way out to the West, man? Ever? I'm actually in California. You ever come out to like, California or anything like that?
Not as of yet. I'd love to go out there. It'd be great to be cheered. Obviously, California has its conservative parts as well. I've traveled to the West Coast. I've not wrestled in the West Coast as of yet.
Yeah, man. I think now's the time. There's a lot of stuff coming up again. I think they just even restarted XPW. XPW was pretty cool back in the day.
Oh, terrific.
So I do want to ask as well, what obviously, if you want to do something, you want to be the best, right? And so, making it to one of the big companies is probably always a major goal, but is that something that you see as a goal of yours? And if so, what does it take to get there?
Well, I have some perspective on that. Like I've had a couple tryouts with WWE where I've been booked as extra talent and then had tryout matches. Nothing came of that, but just have the opportunity was great. I'm 42 years old right now, so no one's probably beating my door down for a contract at this point, just because that's considered a little older in our business. However, I won't stop trying and believing that one day I can have a match on national television. I won't stop, and for all the detractors, I don't care. So I'll keep going forward.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of options right now. WWE, AEW, they have their Ring of Honor, spinoff as well. And I think what we got, still got Impact, there's NWA, there's all kinds of options out there. If people wanted to watch you, do you have your matches posted anywhere like online where people can find some of your work?
Appalachian Mountain Wrestling, where I used to wrestle when I first started going viral in 2017. Southern States Wrestling today. Find their YouTube channel, subscribe, like, and subscribe. I'll have matches coming up on that. So, and then I have some sprinkled in on my YouTube channel as well, from over the years. So I haven't been super great about posting content on there, but I do have some.
Okay. So that, it just kind of leads me into like, where can people find you on social media?
Well, I would always say YouTube me, YouTube, the Progressive Liberal, Daniel Richards. There's plenty of content on me there. I'm on Twitter at ProgressLib804, and I have a I have a Facebook fan page as well.
Okay.
I can.
And I really appreciate you taking this call on the road. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just wanted to see if there's anything else you want to throw out there to the podcast world.
Well, I want to say, like, for all the podcasts, like I'm as grateful to do a podcast like this as I was to be on CBS News or Vice or CNN. I'm grateful for the opportunity and to spread the liberal agenda.
For sure. Yeah, well, again, I know it was kind of choppy here, but I had a good time talking to you and learning a little bit more about indie wrestling and hearing about your character for sure. I think that's really cool. So I really do appreciate having you on here. And hopefully people look you up, man, and check you out, because there's some entertaining stuff right there, especially playing with everything that's topical, and that's what pro wrestling's all about,
Yeah, well, the pleasure's mine. So thank you for having me on, and Yeah, really appreciate it.
For sure. All right. So for everybody listening at home, I appreciate it. Thank you. Fuck you and good night.
Subscribe to the Ignorance is Strength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Like, follow, and share on Facebook and Instagram at Ignorance is Strength Podcast and on Twitter at The Ignorance Pod.